This is IGN.
A tacked-on Titan. This is your IGN review of Kong: Survivor Instinct by Tristan Ogilvie. If you've ever wondered what the arcade classic Rampage would be like if you had to play as a puny human rather than one of the skyscraper-smashing Goliaths, then Kong: Survivor Instinct might be your answer. This 2.5D Metroidvania platformer takes place amidst a crumbling coastal cityscape, while Kong and his kaiju combatants duke it out in the background, making it seem at first glance a bit like a shadow complex situated within Shadow of the Colossus. It's a novel enough concept, but basic environment puzzle design and uninspired combat means that Survivor Instinct is unable to reach the towering heights of its ideas, and as I begrudgingly pushed crates and collected keys to make my way through each ruined urban rabbit hole, I could never really shake the impression that Kong seemed to be having considerably more fun than I was. Not that actually playing as Kong would be a guaranteed good time, of course. 2023's Skull Island: Rise of Kong was such an unmitigated disaster that the aftermath of its self-destruction is probably still being studied by scientists from the Monarch organization. Kong: Survivor Instinct is a notably better game than that, but once the novelty of having the iconic angry ape messing about in the middle distant fades, it just doesn't have the level of creativity or player freedom that other superior games of this ilk released in recent years. It also doesn't have much of a story beyond "don't get smashed by the monkey." The story may be weak, but the look and feel of its crumbling 2.5D environments is undoubtedly its strength. David's quest leads him from smoldering suburban outskirts to devastated downtown areas and the mysterious subterranean facilities below, and each dilapidated diorama is rich with precise detail and convincing depth. Kong: Survivor Instinct does perhaps try a bit too hard to convince you that every structure you explore is an unstable one, with the repetitive routine with which it collapses the floor beneath your feet or drops chunks of the ceiling onto your skull, and that does get old pretty fast. However, it also allows you to scamper along the roofs of cars suspended by the webs of a towering arachnid and navigate your way through the slanted corridors of an apartment building that's been violently upended by Kong. So there are some more interesting platforming sections among them. It's just a shame that so much of the exploration is built around the same pushing of crates and shooting of padlocked gates. The very best Metroidvanias like Hollow Knight or Metroid Dread gradually empower you with new tools and abilities that incentivize you to backtrack through the world and unlock previously unreachable areas, but Kong: Survivor Instinct is comparatively light on when it comes to evolving the ways in which you interact with your surroundings. Here, by contrast, David is given a sledgehammer to smash through weakened walls and eventually a grappling hook to scale up to specific anchor points. But otherwise, his progression is always painfully obvious and consists of the same rehashed circuit boxes to shoot or generators to repair, copied and pasted along the winding path towards each mission objective. This general absence of ingenuity also drains the enjoyment out of its combat, which is primarily geared towards melee attacks, since ammunition for David's pistol is so scarce. There is some nuance to each scrap. With Jonah's soldiers, you can block or parry their blows to open them up for a counterattack, or grab them and use them as a human shield when their more heavily armed comrades open fire, and I was pleased to discover that you can even shoot them in the leg to drop them to their knee so that you can deliver a series of finishing blows a la Resident Evil 4. At the same time, there's a little stiffness in each scrap, particularly when David finds himself surrounded. And since he's unable to jump or climb while he's locked in a combat stance, there were times where I'd knock an enemy off a ledge only to find myself unable to drop down and continue the fight. Annoyingly, the only way forward was to reload my save. Setting a Metroidvania-style platforming adventure against a backdrop of building-raising beasts is certainly an intriguing idea, but unlike its towering cast of kaiju cameos, Kong: Survivor Instinct itself simply doesn't measure up. Its story and characters are underwritten, its ravaged urban playground is eye-catching but not particularly surprising to explore, and its combat fails to evolve enough to keep the fights interesting over the course of the journey. The occasional room-locking escape sequences do literally shake things up, but they're few and far between and only distract from the otherwise uncomplicated platforming for short bursts at a time. King and his kind may hail from an alternate world hidden deep inside the Earth's core, but the actual gameplay of Kong Survivor Instinct is strictly one-dimensional. Kong Survivor Instinct IGN score? 5. Thanks for listening to IGN. My name is Zeke Robison, and for the latest Kong Survivor Instinct updates, visit us at IGN.com.
Spoken Layer.